My friends, I want to start off by thanking the hundreds of you that came out to my campaign launch last Saturday, the 13th of March. Your presence and your kind words of encouragement is what keeps me fired up and ready to go. I also want to thank my good friend Kayleen, who not only introduced me, but also reminded me of what it took to bring former US President Bill Clinton to the Cayman Islands 10 years ago this month, where he spoke on the theme, Embracing Our Common Humanity, which also is inspiration for my One Love, One Cayman campaign slogan. My friends, as a second-generation Caymanian who was also educated in Kingston and New York, I'm acutely aware of the prejudice, the discrimination, and xenophobia that comes with having a different accent. Part of being Caymanian is our rich history, our rich culture, and our diversity. Our success was not based on immigration, but rather integration. People from several different nationalities coming together, working together to create the uniqueness that we have today. As Bill Clinton reminded us 10 years ago, we have more in common that unites us than what divides us. And we need leaders that will bring us together to create One Cayman. As I promised at my campaign launch, I'll provide highlights of that historic evening that proved we can do anything that we set our minds to. Putting on such an event was not an easy task, and there were scores of people in the background that helped and inspired me to make this event possible. Unbeknownst to many, at one point, I almost pulled the plug. I woke up that morning with all intentions of doing so, and out of the blue, my son Brandon, who was 10 at the time, came to me and said, "So Daddy, you're bringing a US president to Cayman, a real US president, one that lived in the White House and flew on Air Force One?" I said, "Yes, son." He said, "Daddy, that is really awesome, and I'm so very proud of you." At that moment, there was no turning back, and the rest is history. As I've said in previous videos, there are some uncomfortable conversations that we need to have if we are serious about moving our country forward. We need to start looking out for each other more. We need to start being there for each other. We need to start embracing our common humanity and recognize that we are all living in one Cayman. I hope that you enjoyed the highlights from that historical night. For me, the most memorable part was seeing my parents and other family members cry to see me share the stage with former US President Bill Clinton. Please enjoy.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you all for giving me my very first trip to the Cayman Islands. Thank you. I have education projects in the Middle East and the United States and a few elsewhere. But the point of all this is, when I left the White House, I realized, with some sadness, that I would never play golf well enough to go on the senior tour. That I was too out of practice in my saxophone playing to take the stage. And that it was not my highest and best use. And so, in a way, because when I was leaving, my wife was going into the Senate representing New York, we switched places and I became the head of a non-governmental organization. In that role, I have now worked for 10 years, 2 years longer than I was president. And as a part of the fastest growing citizenship movement in America, in the world, there are now 1 million non-governmental organizations. Chris is going to question me. It's a classic example. I saw in his, they gave me a little bio on him. You know, he works to support committees in higher education and healthcare and other things. The thing that meant the most to me, he taught accounting to prisoners in the institution. Thank you very much for doing that. I think that's really important. This idea of citizen action, private people trying to do public good, is the fastest growing social development in the world in the last 15 years. America has 1 million foundations doing various kinds of things. 50% of them have been established in the last 15 years. And India has 500,000. China's got 250,000, which are registered, and probably that many more not registered because of political conflicts. Half the world's people, the Caymans have a per capita income of about $43,000 a year, I think. One of the highest in the world. Good for you. Half the world's people live on less than $2 a day. 1 billion people live on less than $1 a day. 1 billion people go to bed hungry every night. 1 billion more never get a clean glass of water. 2.5 billion never have any kind of access to sanitation. And 100 million never go to school, and another 100 million go to school in name only because they never have a trained teacher or learning materials. So it's a very unequal world. Now, if you're like me and you believe in the free enterprise system and you see success stories like all of you, you know we have to be willing to accept some inequality so that there are some rewards for hard work and good ideas and ingenuity. And most societies are willing to do that. But if you have too much, it can become incendiary. One of the things that put all those kids in the street in Egypt is that every year the Egyptian university system was producing 400,000 university graduates and nowhere near 400,000 new university level jobs. So the trick is to have enough incentive for people who can be rewarded for hard work or stunning management ability or new ideas, and enough equal opportunity so that you can build a broad middle class and have social cohesion. Second big problem the world has is that it is too unstable to continue at this rate throughout the 21st century. Look at the most recent examples. The financial collapse starts in the United States. I apologize for that. Quickly spreads to the UK, which didn't have securitized subprime mortgages and a lot of these other ridiculous bait and switch complicated financial instruments, but just had a housing boom and financial institutions more heavily leveraged than many of ours. Then it immediately affects Ireland, which almost overnight went from the fastest growing economy in Europe to the country with the highest unemployment rate. China had $2 trillion in the bank, and all of a sudden they had 35 million unemployed people because the Europeans and the Americans couldn't afford to buy their products anymore. You had a 6.6% reduction in your GDP in 1 year because there wasn't as much demand for your banking services. You don't worry about avoiding taxes if you don't have any money that owe taxes if you leave it somewhere else. And because there weren't as many tourists, because people were beginning to watch every dollar they had. We worry about cybercrime, the invasion of records. What would happen if somebody could figure out how to get down and shut down and erase all the records in all the banks in the Cayman Islands? What would happen to your economy? What if somebody wanted to make the UK look impotent in the modern world? Presumably you have the smartest people in the world working on it. You don't think it can happen, but I promise you there are people trying to penetrate every computer network on planet Earth. Look at terrorism. An American citizen, Pakistani American, comes to the United States, marries a Pakistani American woman. He got 2 university degrees, she got 1. The economic crisis happens, he gets disillusioned, he gets into the circle of people who are blaming America for the world's ills. He gets the passport, he has an American passport, he goes home to Pakistan, finds his way to a terrorist training camp, comes back and tries to set off a car bomb in Times Square in New York City. Thank God he didn't make it. Drug trafficking, money laundering, the spread of organized crime and non-state actors. Look at the drug war Mexico is fighting and the struggle that you face. What would you do if you were president of Mexico? How would you build a modern state? The world that we live in is simply not sustainable because the way we produce and consume energy is changing the climate in destructive ways that will have horrible, unpredictable consequences. And I think the evidence is on my side. I think if we change the way we produce and consume energy, it would do more than anything else that we could possibly do in the advanced societies to generate new jobs, new businesses, and new horizons. The real problem is that the old energy economy is paid for day by day by day, drip, drip, drip. A clean energy economy requires you to invest almost all the cost up front, after which it's virtually free to run. So we haven't worked out the financing. But if you believe what I'm saying, and you think about how all these things affect one another, it's estimated that you could lose half your structures by the end of the 20th century if the sea levels rise that much. We could lose 50 feet of Manhattan Island, America's most valuable real estate. Where my office is, I'm in Harlem in the middle of the island, I'll be fine. I'm only trying to be funny here, but it's to keep from crying. It's a very troubling thing. Right now, Australia is already reeling from the effects of changing climate.
With a lot of the have-nots across the globe worsening because of the economic fallout in so many developed and developing countries, will we not see an acceleration in terrorism and religious extremism such as the containment, such as that would be overwhelmed or something?
Not necessarily. I think it's more likely that we'll see an upsurge in drug trafficking and organized crime. I think that there's no evidence that the ability to combat terrorism is being significantly eroded. There's no evidence yet that the popular appetite for terrorism is going up. I think that could happen, what you suggest, but this thing will, if it drags on for years, several more years. But I think what's more likely to happen is in pockets where there is no opportunity, where there aren't unemployment systems, retraining systems, support systems, the very well organized and disciplined organized crime units, particularly but not exclusively those trading in narcotics, are likely to do better in a time like this. And it's troubling, but it's true.
Mr. President, thank you very much.
You really want to end on a downer? Ask me something else. We can't end on a downer. Let's go with one more question.
All right.
I'm just going home to freezing New York tonight. I don't mind if you keep me here another 30 minutes. You can go home to bed. He and I'll stay here and talk alone so I can prolong my comfort.
Actually, there is one more question. I was the one a little bit more curious about, and I think many people in the room probably feel the same way. What does the Cayman Islands have to do, I guess, to be seen in a positive light within the United States? I mean, I know it's been like the bank secrecy and a lot of that different kind of stuff, a lot of different negative connotations. Like, what can we do to be seen to be doing more, I guess,
in a more positive light?
Yeah.
The Caymans?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, you need more publicity for what you have done to try to help us on money laundering and things like that. You've actually done a lot of good stuff to try to avoid your banking system being used in ways that are both illegal and incredibly harmful. Secondly, you need to point out to people, mostly in my party, who are mad about all the tax avoidance schemes, that it is not your fault if America legalizes people parking their money down here. You have a right to have whatever tax system you want in this country. And that's more our problem than yours. What I'd like to see us do, we need a total overhaul of the American tax system. in my opinion. We have, I'll just give you an example. I think America's having entirely the wrong debate now. I mean, this whole deal is, now we're back to where we were 30 years ago. It's all the government's fault. The government would mess up a two-car parade. Regulation is horrible. We had that financial meltdown because there was no proper oversight of the bundling of securitized subprime mortgages and the spinning of derivatives out of it, like those collateralized debt obligations. We had that meltdown because we wound up having institutions that were too big to fail, that were leveraged at Bear Stearns, 34, 35 to 1, Lehman Brothers, 29 to 1, and AIG, God knows what, 40 to 1 or whatever. That doesn't prove we don't need regulation. All markets tend to extremes and self-destruction. So it's not government or no government. Taxes are bad, tax cuts are good. Spending's bad, spending cuts are good. There is no successful country, wealthy country on earth, or rising country, that does not have a strong economy, good governance, and increasingly a rising non-governmental sector. And so what we should be asking is, how do we put America back in the future business? And I would have preferred, it wasn't possible given the outcome of the election and people's allergies to it, but I would have preferred if my tax cut, which was extended, instead, I would rather it have elapsed and the money been used to lower corporate tax rates and make it easier for people to start small businesses. Why? Because that's more effective on the jobs front. And that gets you investment. Past a certain income level, we can't possibly spend all that money. Right now, we need money spent and invested in the real economy. And I think America will have to lower overall business tax rates, but we have so many so-called tax expenditures so that one company may make $100 million and pay 30% taxes, and another may make the same amount of money in a similar business and pay 8%. And what we really ought to do is to lower the rate and clean out the underbrush, make it affordable and competitive for America and the world, and simplify it, I think. We did this once before, and I tried to simplify it once. It's harder than it sounds because of the way politics works. The present always has an advantage over the future. Machiavelli said a long, long time ago that there's nothing so difficult in all human affairs as to change the established order of things, because those who will be disadvantaged by the change are certain of their loss, while those who will benefit are uncertain of their gain.
Thank you for that reminder, President Clinton. And my friends, just remember, elections have consequences. God bless.